comfortably welcome the first speaker of the proposition to give his speech. Hear, hear.
Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. There's a general consensus among intellectuals and the public today that this is probably the most ineffective cabinet that we have seen in the last 20 years. It is a time for us to act now, and otherwise, if we do not act now, we risk losing the next 5 to 10 years of development as a state. In my speech, we're going to be showing you two things in our arguments. Firstly, why firing is the best strategy to deal with ineffectiveness in government. And secondly, we're going to be showing you why the reshuffling that they're going to be talking about largely cannot work. Firstly, let me set up the framing and the contextualization of this debate with 4 layers. Layer number 1. Most of the time, these people have signed performance contracts. Therefore, we have a justification for firing them to the extent they don't meet certain key performance indicators in those performance contracts. Secondly, most of the time, you're going to be given time. The president's most recent reshuffle has happened almost a year after election. So nobody can complain and say they were not given time to be able to show their effectiveness as a cabinet minister. Thirdly, and most importantly, most of these metrics are going to be objective metrics and not subjective ones. Because if you're the Minister of Finance, you have a key performance indicator to reduce the budget deficit. If you're the Trade Minister, is the FDI and the GDP increasing? If you're the Agriculture Minister, is food production increasing? So you cannot say that you're going to be politicized or this is going to become a political affair, because your role as a minister is as a head of an organization, and that organization has objective metrics it must meet. And the last thing I want to say in the framing is that key performance or effectiveness in government is not just about producing, but also preventing loss. So what we'd like to say is that a lack of performance also includes resource leakages within governments, issues to do with corruption, issues to do with mismanagement of funds, which is probably the most endemic problem facing the governments today, and that is what the role of ministers is to fix that. In my first argument, I'm going to be showing you why firing them is the best method to deal with this. First point of argumentation. I'm going to say that to a great extent, government ministries are no different from private companies. These people or these are organizations that necessarily are headed by these ministers. And these ministers are at the top of that organization. What is the role of a minister or somebody who is at the head of organization? I'm only going to give 2 which are important to this debate. Firstly, their important organization is positive, that people are working, that states or these organizations are effective, and people are doing what they need to do. And secondly, they are tasked with the responsibility of managing the resources within these organizations. At a point where you are failing at both of these roles to ensure that the culture of government workers is to ensure effective service delivery, at a point where resource leakages are the story of the day, you have no business being a minister at that point, because this is a task that has been given to you by the Kenyan people, and you're necessarily failing. So we prefer to know that we are under the leadership of those who are the best at managing these two, because one, as a minister, you are at the highest level of this organization, and this organization has an impact on millions of Kenyans' lives. Your failure is going to be very expensive on people's lives. So at a point where you're not going to be able to do this role well, we say that these organizations must change. And here is the intuition. Organizations rot at the top. At a point where the culture of the ministry is sluggish, at a point where resource mismanagement is the order of the day, this is a reflection on your identity as a minister and your ability to perform at that level. So what we say is that when the ministry is failing, you as the leader must step down and move away. That's the first layer. The organization needs to have effective leadership at the top to prevent the trickle-down rotting of the entire organization. For years, we have allowed leaders who are doing nothing to stay at the top, which is why the government cannot operate today. The culture is rotten. We must change it now. The second thing we then say at that point is that these people have signed performance contracts. They have the standard to meet, and that standard has been set for them. They are bound by these contracts. A failure to meet those key performance indicators means you must step down, because you are violating your own contract by not ensuring that the things that you said you were going to do are not going to happen. 2, you have taken an oath of office. Not only have you signed a contract, but sworn to God and the people that you're going to do your best to ensure that you meet certain key performance indicators. At a point where you're failing, a reshuffling does not solve that problem. We must deal with the people and remove them so that we get people who are willing to do the job. This is the order of the day in the most effective governments that exist in this world. Look at this situation. In the UK, we had a leader, Theresa May. They were supposed to deliver Brexit. She failed. They brought Boris Johnson. He could not deliver Brexit. He failed. They brought Liz Truss. I think she stayed 2 weeks. Couldn't and said, this job is too much for me. Stepped down. Now we have another person. This is the culture. The Netherlands government failed on immigration policy. The Prime Minister had to step down. as the leader of the organization, at a point where you're unable to deliver on your key performance indicators and your performance contract, you have no business pretending you can do it later. Step down, let those who have the capacity to come and do it, and that's what we believe. The third thing then we say is that the process of hiring and firing ought to be an issue of meritocracy. Those people who exist are ready, and there are people out there who are ready and willing to step up. Even these campus students, they can go and do that job better than them. We have graduates without jobs. There are people who can do this job. So at a point where we ensure that the culture is not one of meritocracy, where we allow people who are failing to remain within these positions, we say that they must come, or we must have a situation where those who fail step down and those who are doing well stand up. What is the impact of this? Improvement in service delivery and effectiveness, because people are constantly on their toes. When you know at the back of your mind there are consequences for failure, you have an incentive to do better. You have an incentive to work harder. And if these people are just reshuffled, that incentive is taken away. You have no incentive because you know you're going to just get a soft landing, maybe in another ministry somewhere, which is a failure. We believe that at that point, firing is the only legitimate cause to ensure effective service delivery, and the culture of sluggishness must change. In my last 15 seconds, I'm going to be talking about something about resource leakages. At a point where the biggest problem with governments today is the mismanagement of resources. Our president said we lose 2 billion a day. David Lee recently on television said that wastage in government is rampant. The problem we must be dealing is plugging resource gaps. What we say is that a failure in performance is not just about creating. As the CEO, your responsibility is not just to make sure the company is running well, but that the company is not losing money. The same with ministers. When we lose money every day, these people are sluggish in dealing with these problems. We believe that at a point where these people are aware that loss of resources means you're going to lose your job, there is an incentive for them to fight these problems of mismanagement of resources and corruption. My deputy will speak more about this. In the end, there is no better way of dealing with this problem than to remove those who are not doing their jobs properly. Thank you.